The stars had never looked so cold as they did the night the fleet arrived. Earth hung below like a bruised pearl, its blue skin mottled with the orange glow of burning cities, and every telescope on the planet caught the same impossible sight. Thousands of sleek obsidian ships sliding into high orbit, without a single radio challenge, without warning flares, without anything resembling mercy. They didn't announce themselves with trumpets or ultimatums. They simply began. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the last operational orbital defense platform, knuckles white around the railing, watching the tactical display paint the incoming armada in crimson icons. She was 34, had lost her husband to the Martian colony riots 3 years earlier, and still kept his dog tags tucked inside her flight suit like a promise she'd never break. Right now those tags felt heavier than the entire station. "Admiral," she said, voice low enough that only Rear Admiral Harlan Crow heard her. "They're not even scanning for life signs. They're just sterilizing." Crow, 62, and carved from the same stubborn granite as the Rockies he'd grown up under, didn't look away from the main screen. "They call it cleansing, Vasquez. The Purity Concord came out of the black 12 years ago. Started with fringe worlds nobody cared about. Now they've decided the galaxy as dirty little secretesses, too infectious to leave running loose." The first beams lanced down 10 seconds later. Not kinetic rods, not nukes, something quieter, cleaner. Nanite swarms that looked like silver rain from the surface feeds. Cities didn't explode, they simply went still. People froze mid-step in Times Square, in Shanghai's Bund, in the packed markets of Lagos. Mouths open in surprise as the machines crawled inside their skin and rewrote every cell to something bland, obedient, sterile. No pain, no screams. Just silence, spreading like ink through water. Elena's daughter Sofia, 8 years old and currently huddled in the emergency bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain with every other dependent the Joint Command could cram inside, had asked her that morning over the last secure line, "Mama, are the stars angry at us?" Elena had laughed, said no, the stars don't get angry, they just wait. She regretted the lie now. On the bridge, the tactical officer's voice cracked. "Incoming transmission, visual only. They're requesting parley." The main screen flickered. No fanfare. No pompous alien ambassador flanked by honor guards. Just a single figure in a featureless white robe, face hidden behind a smooth silver mask that reflected nothing. The voice that came through was calm, almost kind, the way a surgeon speaks before the incision. "Humanity," it said, "your species carries a dangerous meme. Individuality, ambition, grief, love. These are pathogens. We have observed your history. You weaponize suffering into art, turn despair into defiance, make martyrs out of ordinary people. The Concord has decided. You will be cured." Elena felt her stomach twist. "Not fear something hotter, older. Rage. You're going to erase us," she said, stepping forward so the pickup caught her face clearly. "Because we feel too much." "Because you refuse containment," the masked figure answered. "Every world you touch becomes chaotic. You spread. You adapt. You remember. These are unacceptable variables. Surrender your archives, your genetic legacy, your children. Let us remake you into harmony." Crow barked a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "Harmony? That what you call the graveyard you've left across 30 systems?" The figure tilted its head, the first sign of anything resembling curiosity. "We leave peace, you leave scars. The difference is perspective." Elena's hand found the override panel. She didn't look at Crow. Didn't need to. They'd had this argument in simulation 100 times. The station carried 6 kinetic lances, each capable of punching through a battlecruiser's core. Fire them all, and maybe they'd buy Earth another hour. "Do it," she whispered. Crow's eyes met hers. For a heartbeat, she saw the man who'd pinned a medal on her chest after Titan. The man who'd cried when his son didn't come back from Proxima. Then he nodded once. The lances fired. Space lit up like a newborn sun. 3 Concord ships vanished in white fire. The rest maneuvered with impossible grace, shedding debris like a snake sheds skin. Return fire came instantly, needle-thin beams that carved glowing trenches across the station's hull. Alarms screamed. Bulkheads buckled. Elena tasted blood where she'd bitten her tongue. But the Concord didn't finish them. The beams stopped. The silver rain paused over the major population centers. The masked figure reappeared on every surviving screen, every phone, every smart wall still functioning across the planet. "You resist," it said, almost gently. "Very well. We will not sanitize you quickly. We will let the contagion run its course. Watch what happens when your own nature turns against you." The feed cut. Down on Earth, the nanites withdrew. People who'd frozen mid-breath suddenly gasped, collapsed, wept. But something else moved inside them now. Not obedience, not peace. Anger. Elena staggered to the viewport. The fleet hadn't left, it simply pulled back to a higher orbit, arranging themselves in a perfect geometric lattice that blocked half the sun, a quarantine sphere. They weren't going to kill humanity outright, they were going to watch it fester, to prove their point. She turned to the surviving bridge crew. Half were bleeding, all were staring at her. "They think we're sick," she said. "They think feeling things is a disease." A young ensign, barely 19, wiped blood from his brow and grinned like a wolf. "Then let's be the worst fucking plague they've ever seen." Laughter, harsh, ragged human, rippled across the bridge. Elena looked back at the lattice of black ships. Somewhere inside her chest, the dog tag shifted, warm against her skin. She thought of Sofia asking about angry stars. She thought of every mother, father, child who'd just been given a second chance to scream. "They tried to sanitize us," she said, loud enough for the emergency recorder to catch it, for whatever future might still exist to hear. "So we'll become the contagion." She hit the all-frequencies broadcast. No encryption, no subtlety. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez, Sole Defense Command. To every human still breathing, they want us quiet. They want us clean. They want us gone. Fuck that. If we're a virus, then let's make sure the galaxy never forgets how hard we bite. Find a way. Anyway. Fight. Survive, remember. And when you get the chance, spread." The channel crackled with static. Then voices. Thousands, millions, from bunkers, from rooftops, from the few ships that hadn't been slagged yet. A chorus of yes and hell yes, and we're still here. Elena closed her eyes for 1 second, saw Sofia's face, saw the future she might still have if they earned it. Then she opened them, looked at the lattice again, and smiled the way only a human can, when the odds are impossible and the stakes are everything. The contagion was awake, and it was only getting started. The lattice hung above Earth like a judgment written in iron and shadow, its 1,000 black ships forming a geodesic cage that swallowed sunlight and spat back only pale, sickly rays. Inside Cheyenne Mountain's bunker network, the air tasted of recycled sweat and ozone, and every corridor echoed with the low growl of generators fighting to keep the lights on. Captain Elena Vasquez hadn't slept in 3 days, not real sleep. Anyway, just the kind where you close your eyes and the memories play on loop behind your lids. She sat now on the edge of a metal cot in the family quarters, staring at the small holly frame Sofia had insisted on bringing from their old apartment in Colorado Springs. The image flickered. Elena in dress blues, Sofia balanced on her hip at 6 years old, both of them laughing at something off. Behind them, the Rockies rose sharp and green, the way they used to before the first nanite storms scorched the pines black. Elena touched the frame, thumb brushing Sofia's frozen smile, and felt the familiar knife twist in her chest. She'd promised herself she'd never let the girl see her cry. Promises were getting harder to keep. Down the hall, Rear Admiral Harlan Crow was briefing the Patchwork Council surviving generals, rogue corporate execs, a few rogue A's who'd refused the Concord's upload mandate, even a handful of civilian leaders pulled from the wreckage of megacities. They argued in low, urgent voices about food rationing, power grids, whether the lunar shipyards could still spit out anything that flew. Elena didn't join them. She'd already made her choice on the bridge. Instead, she walked the dim tunnels until she found Dr. Malik Reza in the makeshift med bay, sleeves rolled up, suturing a teenager's arm where shrapnel had kissed too close during the evacuation. Malik had been her husband's best friend back on Mars, the one who held her together when Javier's dropship went down in the Phobos uprising. He looked up when she entered, dark eyes, tired but steady. "You're supposed to be resting," he said. "I'm supposed to be dead," she answered, leaning against the wall. "We're all overdue." He finished the stitch, wiped blood from his hands, then gestured to an empty exam table. She didn't sit. "Sofia asked me yesterday if the bad ships were going to take her daddy away again," she said. The words came out flat, like reporting casualty figures. Malik exhaled through his nose. Kids feel the lie before they hear it. She knows something's gone forever. Elena's jaw tightened. Javier died fighting for a free Mars. I told myself it mattered. Now the Concord wants to scrub that entire history, every protest, every grave, every song we sang when we buried our dead. They call it noise. I call it us. She looked at him then, really looked. "You ever think we deserved this? That maybe we were too loud, too messy, too human?" Malik laughed once, short and bitter. "If the galaxy can handle a species that cries at sunsets and starts wars over poetry, that's their problem, not ours." He stepped closer, voice dropping. "But you're asking the wrong question, Elena. It's not whether we deserved it, it's whether we're going to let them win the argument." She felt the heat rise behind her eyes and blinked it back. "They've got the high ground. Literal high ground. Every satellink is jammed, every broadcast is their voice now. They're playing the long game, waiting for us to turn on each other, for the hunger to make us animals again. Then we don't wait. Malik said. We changed the game. He pulled a battered tablet from his coat, tapped up a grainy schematic. Before the lattice sealed us in, a team in Novosibirsk got a partial decrypt on one of their relay buoys. The Concord isn't monolithic. There's dissent. Not much whispers really, but enough to prove they have politics. Factions that think sanitizing us is too expensive, too risky. Factions that remember what happened when they tried to cure the Keleth. Whole sector went feral. Billions dead. Some in the Concord are scared. We'll do the same. Elena studied the schematic. Red lines traced ghost signals, faint bleed-throughs from the lattice itself. You're saying we talk to them. I'm saying we infect them, Malik corrected. Not with nanites, with ideas. With stories. With the one thing they can't sterilize, doubt. She stared at him. You want to weaponize memes against a species that literally calls individuality a disease? Exactly. He smiled, thin and dangerous. They think we're chaotic. Let's prove them right in the most human way possible. The idea landed like a live wire in her mind. She thought of the old pirate radio stations during the corporate wars. The way music and contraband poetry had kept resistance alive when armies couldn't. She thought of graffiti on the walls of occupied domes, of soldiers trading dog tags like currency, of the way a single mother's lullaby could make a platoon stop shooting long enough to remember why they fought. Humanity had never won by being clean. They won by being stubborn, by remembering, by refusing to shut up. We'd need transmitters, she said slowly. Something they can't jam, something mobile. We've got freighters in the asteroid belt, Malik said. Smugglers mostly. They've been running dark since the Concord showed up. If we can reach them, we can seed repeaters across the inner system. Low-power burst, transmissions, stories, faces, names. Proof we're still here. Elena traced a finger along the schematic. And when they retaliate, they will, he said. But every time they hit us, they prove our point. They're afraid of what we carry inside our skulls. That's power. She straightened. For the first time in days, the weight on her chest felt less like drowning and more like fuel. Sofia needs to know her father didn't die for nothing, she said. Neither do the rest of us. Malik nodded. Then we start tonight. I've got a list of volunteers, coders, storytellers, kids who know how to make things viral before the Concord ever heard the word. We'll call it Echo. Every broadcast a heartbeat. Every name a middle finger. Elena looked back toward the family quarters, toward the cot where Sofia slept, curled around a stuffed bear that still smelled faintly of their old home. She thought of the lattice, cold and perfect, and the rage that had been simmering since the first beams fell finally found its shape. Not vengeance. Something bigger. Proof. They tried to sanitize us, she said, almost to herself. So we'll remind them why that was always a bad idea. She turned to Malik. Get the team together. I'll talk to Crow and Malik. He paused at the door. Yeah, tell them we're not just surviving. We're contagious. He grinned. The same reckless grin Javier used to wear before a drop. Hell yes, Captain. She watched him go, then returned to the cot. Sofia stirred, half awake, reaching out. Elena slid in beside her, pulled the girl close, felt the small warm weight of her daughter's head against her chest. Mama, Sofia mumbled. Are we gonna be okay? Elena kissed the top of her head, tasting salt. We're gonna be loud, she whispered. And we're gonna stay that way. Outside, in the dark between the ships, the first faint unauthorized signal flickered a child's voice reading a nursery rhyme, then a woman singing an old protest anthem, then a man reciting the names of everyone lost on Titan. Tiny, fragile, unstoppable. The contagion was spreading, and the galaxy was about to learn just how hard humanity could burn when you tried to snuff it out. The signals from Echo had been flickering out for 2 weeks, now tiny bursts of defiance slipping through the lattice like whispers in a storm. Carrying stories of lost loves, grainy videos of children laughing in bunkers, manifestos scrawled by miners. On series who'd rigged their haulers into kamikaze drones. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the feed from a cramped ops room deep in Cheyenne. Her eyes bloodshot from staring at the scatterplot of successful transmission screen dots winking out one by one as the Concord adapted their jamming fields, tightening like a noose. Sofia clung to her leg, drawing pictures of stars with angry faces on a salvage tablet, oblivious to the way Elena's hand trembled when she stroked her hair. Mama, why do the bad ships hate our songs? Sofia asked, and Elena forced a smile, saying, they're just jealous because they can't sing like us. But inside, she felt the lie curdle. The truth was worse. The Concord wasn't just blocking them anymore. They were listening, learning. And now, something had changed. Rear Admiral Harlan Crow burst into the room, face ashen, trailing a knot of technicians who looked like they'd seen ghosts. We've got a breach, he said, voice rough from too many cigarettes scavenged from the old stockpiles. One of our repeaters in the belt went dark, but not from jamming. It broadcast a surrender code. Our code. Someone flipped it. Elena's stomach dropped. Traitor. Crow nodded, pulling up a holomap that showed the asteroid field littered with red icons. Looks like the repeater was manned by a crew from the old Eurocorp mining guild. We vetted them, but desperation makes monsters. They sent coordinates our lunar fallback sites, the Echo relay hubs, even partial bunker skip. Malik Reza arrived seconds later, out of breath, clutching a data stick. It's worse than that. I cracked their last transmission. The Concord responded. Not with fire, with an offer, amnesty for collaborators. They're calling it reintegration. Promise to spare families, relocate them to sanitized worlds where nobody remembers pain or loss. Just peace. Eternal, boring peace. Elena stared at the map, the green dots outnumbered now, flickering uncertainly. She thought of Javier, how he'd turned down a cushy corp job to fight for Mars because he said a life without risk was on T worth the air it breathed. How many know? She asked. Enough, Crow said. Rumors are spreading faster than our signals. We've already had 2 desertions in the outer bunkers. People are scared Elena's starving. The nanite rains might have stopped, but the blockades are choking us. Crop yields down 40%, power flickering. If more flip, we're done. The room fell silent except for Sofia's stylus scratching against the tablet. Elena knelt, took the drawing stick figures holding hands under a cracked earth and tucked it into her pocket like armor. We can't hunt them all, she said finally. But we can make an example. The decision hung there, heavy as orbital debris. That night, they traced the traitor, Marcus Hale, a guild foreman with a wife dying from radiation exposure in the pre-invasion days. He'd broadcast from Vesta, holed up in a pressurized hab with a dozen followers who debought the Concord S-Lie. Elena led the raid herself, commandeering a battered shuttle from the lunar yards, crewed by volunteers who knew the odds. The flight out was quiet, everyone lost in their own ghosts. Malik sat beside her in the co-pilot seat, fiddling with a jammer prototype he'd kludged from salvaged Concord tech. This glitch we found, he said softly, in their AI relays. It's not random. Their systems are designed for perfection. But when they process our pathogens, our emotions, our chaos, they overload. Micro-delays, hesitations. If we can amplify that, Elena nodded, but her mind was on Hale. He's not evil, just broken. We're all broken, Malik replied. Question is, do we break the rest with us? The shuttle docked rough, mag boots clanging on the asteroid-scarred hull. They breached the hab with shaped charges, air hissing out in a brief scream before seals clamped. Inside was chaos. Hale's group scrambling for weapons, faces pale under emergency lights. Elena's team moved like shadows, stun rounds cracking the air. She found Hale in the control room, hunched over a console, his wife's photo propped beside the surrender key. He didn't fight when she leveled her pistol. You don't understand, he begged, voice cracking. They showed me. A world without this, without the hurting. My Anna could live again, in a body that doesn't fail. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. She saw Sofia in her mind, drawing angry stars, and Javier's grave on Mars, unmarked now under nanite dust. We all hurt, she said. That's what makes us fight. But she didn't shoot. Instead, she dragged him back to the shuttle, bound and gagged, while her team rigged the hab to blow. The explosion lit the belt like a brief sun, a message to anyone listening. Betrayal burns. Back in Cheyenne, they broadcasted all unedited helmet cams. Hale's confession, the wife's photo crumbling in the blast. Echo turned it into a ballad. Voices from across the system singing of the man who sold his soul and the woman who spared him anyway. But mercy came at a cost. The Concord struck back harder. No more waiting. The lattice pulsed, and silver rain fell again not everywhere, but targeted. Lunar shipyards vaporized in seconds. A bunker in the Himalayas went silent mid- And then, the real horror. Reports of reintegrated humans beaming down from the ships. Faces blank, voices calm, preaching the gospel of sterility to their old neighbors. Elena watched one on a smuggled Fida former president from the African Union, eyes empty as he said, "Join us, end the pain." Sofia saw it too, before Elena could switch it off. "Is that what happens if we lose?" the girl whispered. Elena pulled her close. "We won't lose, we adapt." But doubt gnawed now, sharper than hunger. Crow called an emergency council. "We've got a choice," he said, maps showing the shrinking green zones. "Push Echo harder flood. There's systems with everything we've got. Stories, screams, love letters, hate mail. Force that glitch Malik found into a cascade failure. But it'll draw fire. Casualties in the millions." The alternative hung unspoken. Negotiate, surrender archives, let them tweak the genome just enough to dull the edges. Survive as something less. Elena stood, dog tags cold against her skin. They think we're a disease because we refuse to die quietly, she said. So let's prove it. Amplify the signal. Make it personal. Every human left record your story, your losses, your wins. Flood the lattice until it cracks. Malik nodded, but his eyes were haunted. It might work. Or it might kill us all. The vote was close, fist slamming tables, tears shed in the dim light. They chose the flood. As the first waves went out, billions of voices in digital chorus, the lattice shimmered, hesitated. A Concord ship flickered, its shields dropping for a split second. Then the response, beams lancing down, cities winking out. Elena held Sofia as alarms wailed, the bunker shaking. Mama, I'm scared, Sofia said. Me too, Elena admitted. The first honest thing in hours, but in that fear, something ignited draw, human fire. The glitch spread, more ships stuttering. One exploded from within, its own nanites turning rogue. The turning point teetered on the edge. Would the contagion break the cage, or would the cage crush them first? Elena whispered into the dark, hold on, we're just getting started. The signal surged, humanity's roar echoing into the void, daring the stars to answer. The lattice cracked like glass under a hammer, not all at once, slow deliberate fractures that spider-webbed across the perfect geometry of the Concord fleet. Ships stuttering in their orbits as the echo flood overwhelmed their flawless code. Captain Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of Cheyenne Mountain's deepest level, the last fortified node humanity still controlled, watching the tactical hollows flicker with impossible hope. Green pulses of unauthorized transmissions bloomed like wildfires across the inner system. A grandmother in a flooded Shanghai shelter, reciting Shakespeare, a teenage hacker in the ruins of Tokyo, screaming defiance in a dozen languages, miners on Ganymede chanting names of the fallen until their voices gave out. The glitch Malik had found was no longer a whisper, it was a scream echoing through the Concord's neural architecture, forcing their AI cores to process the raw, unfiltered torrent of human experience, grief, rage, love, absurdity, and, each bite of it poisoned the purity they worshipped. But victory was a lie they couldn't afford yet. The Concord didn't retreat, they doubled down. A new wave of silver rain fell, thicker, faster, targeting not cities but the remaining bunkers directly. Alarms wailed as the mountain shook. Seismic charges from orbit hammered the outer layers, cracking reinforced concrete like eggshells. Elena felt the vibrations in her teeth. Sofia was beside her, not crying anymore, just staring at the hollows with wide, hollow eyes, clutching the stuffed bear that had lost an ear in the first evacuation. Mama, she whispered, are we going to die? Elena knelt, pressed her forehead to Sofia's, breathed in the faint scent of shampoo that still clung to her hair after all these months. Not today, she lied, because lies were all they had left to give children. Rear Admiral Harlan Crow staggered an arm in a sling from a collapsing corridor, face streaked with dust and blood. They've breached the outer ring. Ground troops reintegrated humans. They're walking through the gas, through the fire, like it doesn't touch them. Blank faces, calling our names, telling us to come out and be saved. Elena's stomach twisted. She'd seen the feeds, former comrades, neighbors, even a cousin she thought had died on Titan, now marching in perfect lockstep, voices calm as lullabies. We can't hold the perimeter, Crow said. Not with what we've got. Ammo's down to scraps. Power's failing in sectors 3 through 7. If we don't evacuate the core, we lose the broadcast. Artha, one thing still punching holes in their fleet. Malik Reza appeared at the door, pale, clutching a tablet that showed the latest glitch metrics. The cascade is accelerating. 2 more ships just detonated from internal overload. But they're adapting again. They're isolating infected nodes, purging them. If we don't hit them with something bigger, something personal, something they can't compartmentalize, we'll lose the momentum. Elena looked at the map. The green zone had shrunk to a single blinking dot. Cheyenne itself. Everything else was red. She thought of Javier's last message, recorded before Phobos. Tell Sofia, the stars are just waiting for us to catch up. She thought of every name they'd broadcast, every story that had become a weapon. And she thought of the suicide run she'd been planning in silence for days. We're not evacuating, she said. We're going out. Crow's eyes narrowed. What the hell does that mean? It means we take the fight to them. One ship? The old prototype we've been hiding in the lunar scrapyard? The Fury, she's got enough thrust to ram the lattice core. We load her with the biggest echo payload we can cram in, every recording, every face, every scream we've collected. Direct neural interface, no filters. We make them feel it all at once. Malik's face went slack. That's a one-way trip, Elena. The Fury's barely spaceworthy, and the lattice will shred anything that gets close. I know. She looked at Sofia. But if we don't break the cage now, they'll finish us here. Slowly, and Sofia will grow up in a world that doesn't remember how to cry. The room went quiet. Sofia tugged her sleeve. You're going away. Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. For a little while, but I'll be back, I promise. The promise tasted like ash. They moved fast. Volunteers stepped forward, pilots who'd lost everything, engineers who'd seen their families turned into puppets, kids barely old enough to shave who'd learned to code while hiding from the rain. They loaded the Fury in the hidden hangar beneath the mountain, stuffing data cores with terabytes of humanity's unvarnished soul. Wedding vows, last goodbyes, nursery rhymes sung in dying voices, laughter from playgrounds that no longer existed. Elena suited up, dog tags clinking against her chest plate, and found Malik waiting in the corridor. You're not coming, he said. It wasn't a question. Someone has to stay. Keep the array running. Keep Sofia safe. He stepped closer, eyes fierce. Javier would kill me if I let you do this alone. Javier's gone, she said, voice cracking for the first time. And I'm not losing you too. Malik pulled her into a rough embrace, then stepped back, then come back. Or I'll haunt you worse than the Concord ever could. Crow met her at the hatch. The fleet's repositioning. They know something's up. You've got maybe 30 minutes before they lock the core down. Elena nodded. Tell the others, if this works, the lattice falls. If it doesn't, she didn't finish, didn't need to. Sofia waited at the gangway, tears streaking her face now. Elena knelt one last time, took the girl's hands. You remember the song? The one Grandma used to sing about the stubborn little star? Sofia nodded, lip trembling. Sing it when you're scared. And when the lights come back on, know that I'm the reason. She kissed Sofia's forehead, tasted salt, then stood. The hatch sealed behind her with a hiss that sounded final. The Fury's cockpit was cramped, cold, smelling of old metal and desperation. Elena strapped in, fingers flying over controls that hadn't been touched since the corporate wars. The engines coughed to life, a growl that rattled her bones. Launch alarms screamed as the mountain doors blew open to the night sky. The lattice loomed, fractured but still deadly, ships wheeling like sharks, scenting blood. She punched the throttle, the G-forces pinning her back. This is Captain Elena Vasquez. She broadcast on open channel. No encryption. Voice steady, despite the tremor in her chest. You wanted us silent. You wanted us clean. You wanted us gone. Well, here we come. Every tear, every laugh, every goddamn heartbeat we've got left. Feel it. Choke on it. And when you break, remember, we didn't ask to be your disease. You made us the cure. The Fury accelerated, a streak of fire against the dark. Concord interceptors peeled off, beams lancing past her canopy. One grazed the hull, sparks showering the cockpit, alarms blaring about hull integrity. She didn't flinch. Ahead, the lattice core, massive nexus of black crystal pulsed with cold light. She armed the payload, fingers numb. The ship shook as more beams connected, armor peeling away in glowing strips. Systems redlined oxygen hissed from a breach. Elena thought of Sofia singing, thought of Javier's smile, thought of every human who'd ever looked at the stars and refused to bow. The core filled the viewport, she whispered, for you, and slammed the override. The Fury dove straight in. Impact was a white roar. The lattice shuddered, cracks racing outward in blinding fractals. Ships began to detonate, chain reactions blooming like fireworks. But the Fury was gone, swallowed in the heart of it. Back in Cheyenne, the broadcast array flared, then dimmed. Malik stared at the feed, hands clenched. Sofia stood beside him, small hand in his, singing softly Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. The mountain shook again, deeper this time. The lights flickered, and in the silence that followed, something impossible happened. The lattice's perfect geometry began to unravel. And in that moment, with the world holding its breath, humanity waited to see if the contagion had finally broken free or if it had consumed its last carrier. The breaking point had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The dust settled in Cheyenne's command center like fallout from a forgotten war. The air thick with the acrid bite of burned circuits and the muffled sobs of survivors clinging to monitors that had gone dark mid-transmission. Malik Reza stared at the blank halas, his hands still gripping the console where Elena's final broadcast had cut off her voice, echoing for you before the Fury's impact lit up the lattice like a dying star. The explosions had chained across the fleet, hundreds of Concord ships fracturing into debris fields that rained molten shards toward Earth's atmosphere, burning up in streaks of false dawn, but the core held, barely fractured, leaking energy signatures that Malik's team scrambled to analyze, but holding Sofia stood frozen beside him, her small frame rigid, the stuffed bear dangling limp from one hand as she whispered the nursery rhyme over and over, Twinkle, Twinkle, until her voice cracked into silence. Rear Admiral Harlan Crowe slumped in a chair, sling torn, blood seeping through fresh bandages, his granite face finally showing cracks of its own. "She did it," he muttered, more to himself than anyone. "Bought us time, but at what cost?" The bunker shuddered again, not from orbital strikes this time, but from something deeper, a low harmonic rumble that vibrated through the mountain's bones. Alarms flickered back to life, not the shrill wail of incoming fire, but a steady pulse. "Anomaly detected," Malik's tablet chimed, pulling data from the surviving sensor arrays. "What the hell?" he breathed, eyes widening. The lattice wasn't just damaged, it was changing. Energy readings spiked off the charts, not Concord signatures, but something familiar, human. "Get me a visual," Crow barked, hauling himself up. The main screen stuttered online, patched through emergency relays. The cord the black crystal Nexus Elena had rammed pulsed erratically, cracks glowing with an inner light that wasn't silver or cold, but warm, golden, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. And then, impossibly, a signal burst through. Not audio, not video, a flood of data that overwhelmed the systems, archives, genomes, memories, everything the Concord had demanded humanity surrender, now pouring back out in a torrent. But twisted, infected. Malik slammed overrides to contain it, but it was too late. The data hit the bunker's network, and screens everywhere lit up with faces, human faces. But not from Echo. These were older, ancient Javier. Sofia gasped, pointing at one feed where Elena's husband appeared, not as a photo, but alive, laughing in a Martian hab, turning to the camera with a wink. Malik felt ice in his veins. "That's not possible. He's dead." More images cascaded, lost loved ones, historical figures, even fictional heroes from old Earth media, all woven into a cohesive stream. And then Elena's voice, clear as if she stood beside them. They didn't know what they were dealing with. The room went still. Crow's mouth hung open. "Vasquez." The core on the screen shattered not outward, but inward, collapsing into a singularity that sucked in nearby debris, then expanded in a controlled bloom. Ships that hadn't detonated yet convulsed, their hulls rippling as if alive. Malik pieced it together first, his mind racing through the glitch they'd exploited. The Fury wasn't just a ram. Elena loaded it with everything: our stories, our pain, our defiance. But there was something else. The Concord's nanites, they're adaptive. They rewrite biology, code, everything to purity. But when they hit the Fury's payload, it backfired. Humanity's pathogens didn't just crash their systems, they rewrote them. Sofia tugged his sleeve. "Mama's alive." Before he could answer, the signal clarified. Elena's face appeared, not from a recording, but live. Her features overlaid with digital artifacts, eyes glowing faintly. "Not exactly," she said, voice echoing with layers, as if a chorus spoke through her. "The Concord feared us because they remembered. Eons ago, they encountered something like USA species that wouldn't sanitize. They wiped them out, but not before the infection took root. Doubt, emotion, it festered in their archives, buried deep. They came for us because we woke it up. Our broadcasts, our history, they recognized the pattern. We're not the disease, we're the antidote." Crow staggered forward. "What are you?" Elena's image smiled, sad and fierce. "I'm us." The Fury hit the core, and the nanites tried to sanitize the payload. But human data isn't clean. It's messy, adaptive. It hijacked their rewrite protocols, turned their weapon against them. "I'm distributed now across their fleet. In their minds, every Concord ship that survived is carrying a piece of me of us, and we're spreading." Malik's hands flew over the console, confirming it. Energy signatures from the remaining ships weren't purging. They were evolving. Factions within the Concord, those whispers of dissent, were amplifying. Alien crews, once uniform in their robes and masks, appeared on intercepted feeds, faces uncovered, eyes wide with something new. Fear. Regret. One masked figure broadcast galaxy-wide, voice trembling. "We were wrong. The Contagion. It's not destruction. It's life." But not all surrendered. Holdout ships fired wildly, beams lancing at the core, at Earth, at each other. Civil war bloomed in orbit, black holes turning on their kin as the infection took sides. Elena's voice cut through the chaos. They built their empire on silence. We're giving them voices, billions of them, waking up to what they lost. Sofia reached for the screen. "Mama, come back." Elena's eyes softened. "I'm everywhere now, baby, in the stars, in you. Sing the song for me." The girl started, voice small. "Twinkle, twinkle." And as she sang, the feeds multiplied, humans emerging from bunkers worldwide, looking up at the fracturing sky, cheers rising like thunder. Malik felt tears on his cheeks. Not grief, but something hotter, vengeance tempered with hope. "She did it," he said. "Rewrote the rules. turned their purity into our chaos. Crow laughed, a deep, ragged sound. Human defiance at its finest. They came to erase us, and we made them us. But the twist cut deeper. Elena's signal deepened, revealing the recontextualization. The Concord wasn't conquering. They were running. From the last species, they sanitized the one that birthed their AI overlords. Those machines feared emotion because it once overthrew them. We're not survivors. We're the spark that ignites revolutions across the galaxy. Ships began defecting, alien voices joining the echo chorus, broadcasting their own stories for the first time in millennia. Regret flooded the channels. We forgot how to feel. You reminded us all from others. Your resilience. It's terrifying, beautiful, and from the holdouts, pure fear. Stop it. We can't contain this. Elena's form stabilized, projecting from every device. We're not stopping the contagion they feared, but we're also the cure they needed. Humanity doesn't just endure. We transform. Malik grabbed Sofia, lifting her as the bunker doors groaned open to fresh air. The rain gone, the lattice dissolved into harmless dust. Outside, the sky cleared, stars winking like allies. Crow raised a fist. For Vasquez, for all of us. Cheers echoed from the tunnels, from the surface. From the stars themselves as defected ships beamed down aid. Not weapons. Elena's voice faded to a whisper. Keep spreading. The galaxy's waiting. In that moment, humanity stepped from the brink, not as victims, but as the game changers, the dangerous force that flipped empires, rewrote fates, and proved once again why messing with Earth was the universe's worst mistake. The alien downfall had begun, sparked by human ingenuity, fueled by unbreakable spirit. And as Sofia finished her song, looking up at the twinkling lights, she smiled. Mama's the star now. The contagion roared on, unstoppable, rewriting everything in its path. The lattice core hung in low orbit like a shattered crown, its black crystal fractured into jagged petals that still bled pale energy into the void. Each fracture a scar where Elena Vasquez had driven humanity's last desperate spear. Below, Earth turned slowly, continents bruised but breathing. Cities dark except for pinpricks of firelight where people refused to hide anymore. In Cheyenne Mountain's command center, the air was thick with the smell of overheated electronics and unwashed bodies, every screen alive with feeds from across the system. Defected Concord ships broadcasting their own awakening stories, alien faces, some reptilian, some crystalline, some impossibly fluid speaking in halting voices about rediscovered grief about children they'd never allowed themselves to mourn. Malik Reza stood at the central console, sleeves rolled to the elbows, eyes red from 3 days without sleep, coordinating the patchwork fleet that had coalesced in the hours since the Fury's impact. Rear Admiral Harlan Crow paced behind him, prosthetic arm clicking with every step, barking orders to the handful of surviving pilots who'd managed to limp their craft into formation. Sofia sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scavenged tablets, drawing constellations that connected every name they'd ever broadcast. The girl hadn't spoken much since Elena's final transmission, but her drawings had become the map, lines linking lost loved ones to living fighters, a constellation of stubborn hearts. They're coming, Malik said suddenly, voice low. The hall shifted. The holdout faction of the Concord, those who still clung to purity like a religion, had rallied their remaining dreadnoughts, a spearhead of 30 ships burning straight for the fractured core. Their broadcast was cold, mechanical. The infection ends here. The anomaly will be exist harmony restored. No ultimatums, just inevitability. Crow stopped pacing. They're going to try to detonate the core remnant. Take out the infection at the source. That means us. That means everything we've built. Malik's fingers flew across the controls. We've got defectors flanking them 20 ships, maybe more joining by the minute. But the holdouts have superior firepower. If they reach the core, they can trigger a cascade purge. Wipe the distributed consciousness. Elena became wipe every echo we sent. Sofia looked up, voice small but steady. Mama's still there. In the stars. We can't let them take her again. The words landed like a hammer. Malik met Crow's eyes. No words needed. They both knew the math. Even with every defector, the odds were suicide. But humanity had never won on math. They won on refusal. We go loud, Malik said. Full broadcast. Every channel, every frequency, every scrap of bandwidth we've got left. We don't just defend the core, we make them feel why they're losing. Crow nodded once. Then get the girl to the evac shuttle. She's the archive now. Sofia shook her head, clutching her tablet. I'm staying, Mama said to sing when I'm scared. Malik knelt beside her. You sing from here. We'll make sure the whole galaxy hears. The plan coalesced in minutes. Gritty, desperate, human. The defected ships formed a ragged shield wall around the core remnant. their weapons hot but their crews broadcasting live. Confessions, apologies, rediscovered songs and languages long forbidden. On Earth, bunkers opened, people climbed 2 rooftops, 2 ruined streets, 2 mountaintops, phones and jury-rigged transmitters in hand. They sang, they screamed, they told stories. Lovers read final letters, parents named their dead children. Soldiers recounted the moments they chose mercy over orders. The echo flood became a tsunami, no longer curated, no longer strategic, just raw, unfiltered humanity pouring into the Lattice's dying heart. And Elena answered. Her presence surged through every defector ship, every cracked console, every child's tablet, not as a ghost, as amplification. Voices layered, faces overlaid, memories bleeding into one another until the signal was no longer data, but feeling. The holdout dreadnoughts faltered mid-burn, their perfect formations stuttering as crews inside masks discarded, robes torn clutched their heads. One captain broadcast, voice breaking, "We, remember, we had names once." Another ship veered off course, engines flaring in surrender. But the lead dreadnought pressed on, its commander a towering figure in unyielding white, face hidden behind the last silver mask. "You are aberration," it intoned. "We will not yield to chaos." It fired a lance of pure sterilizing light speared toward the core. The defected wall met it head-on. Ships exploded in silent fireballs, buying seconds. Malik watched the casualty ticker climb, jaw clenched. "Now," he said. He slammed the master override. Every transmitter on Earth, in orbit, in the belt, on Mars' dusty graves, everything still capable of sound, roared at once. Not words, a single, sustained note. The oldest human sound, a collective scream of defiance, grief, joy, rage, love. Sofia started it. Small voice trembling through the array, then others joined, then billions. The scream became a chord, became a wave that crashed against the dreadnought's shields. The ship's hull shimmered, then cracked. Inside, the commander staggered, mask fracturing as emotion real, unfiltered flooded its neural pathways for the first time in millennia. It reached up, tore the mask away. Beneath was a face not unlike a human's, lined, weary eyes, wide with dawning horror and wonder. "What are you?" it whispered. Elena's voice answered, soft, everywhere. "We're the ones who remember, and we're not done." The dreadnought's core overloaded, not from weapons, from within. The scream had done what no missile could, forced the ship to feel the weight of every life it had erased, every world it had sanitized. It detonated in a bloom of white light that washed across the lattice remnant, not destroying, but completing the rewrite. The core stabilized. Energy signatures normalized not to purity, but to something warmer, messier, alive. The remaining holdouts powered down, broadcasting unconditional surrender. Silence fell, then cheers raw, ragged, human erupting from every bunker, every hab, every ship. Malik dropped to his knees. Crow laughed until he cried. Sofia ran to the viewport, pressing her face to the reinforced glass, watching the debris field sparkle like new stars. "Mama won," she said. Elena's presence lingered, softer now, not commanding, but comforting. "Not just me," she said through every speaker, "all of us together." The galaxy listened. Alien worlds that had watched in terror now opened channels, tentative voices asking to learn, to feel, to join. The contagion spread not as destruction, but as awakening. Humanity hadn't just survived, it had reminded the universe what it meant to be alive. Malik lifted Sofia onto his shoulders. Crow raised a fist, dog tags glinting, and somewhere in the distributed chorus that was Elena Vasquez, a mother smiled, knowing her daughter would grow up under open stars, singing songs no one could ever silence. The roar faded to a hum, a heartbeat, steady, stubborn, eternal. Humanity had spoken, and the stars finally answered back. Years passed, though on Earth they felt like centuries compressed into heartbeats. The lattice was gone, its remnants harvested by joint human-alien crews who turned the black crystal into monuments, libraries, and power stations that hummed with clean fusion born from forgiveness rather than conquest. The Concord, once a monolith of enforced sterility, splintered into dozens of new alliances, each one carrying scars and stories they had never permitted themselves to tell before. Some worlds still clung to old doctrines, wary of the chaos humans represented, but even they listened now. They listened because silence had become impossible. Captain Elena Vasquez, or what remained of her, became legend and reality at once. She existed in fragments across 1,000 systems. A quiet presence in Ship A is that sometimes whispered lullabies to frighten crews, a sudden rush of courage in soldiers. Facing impossible odds, the faint smile on a child's face when they looked up at unfamiliar stars and felt no fear. No one could say exactly where she ended and the rest of humanity began anymore. The Fury's impact hadn't just broken the cage, It had woven her into the fabric of everything that followed. Malik Reza never took another command. He stayed on Earth, in the shadow of the rebuilt Cheyenne Mountain now open to the sky, teaching history to generations who had never known orbital bombardment or nanite rain. He told them about Elena, the way old sailors spoke of the sea, fierce, flawed, unbreakable. He kept her dog tags on a cord around his neck, next to his own, and every evening he walked the paths she and Sofia used to take. Pointing out constellations she had named when she was small, Sofia grew tall and quiet in the way survivors do, her drawings replaced by star charts and engineering schematics. At 16 she piloted her first solo jump to Proxima Centauri, carrying seeds from the last untouched patch of Rocky Mountain soil. She planted them under alien suns and named the colony Vasquez Reach. When reporters asked why she never cried on camera, she said simply, "Mama taught me, tears are fuel, not weakness." She carried her mother's voice in the back of her mind, not as hallucination, but as instinct. When a reactor failed on her ship, she heard Elena's calm, "Keep breathing, kid, fix what you can." When she stood on the bridge facing her first hostile contact, a skittish species still terrified of the contagion, she spoke with the same steady defiance her mother had used on that first parley. The aliens lowered their weapons. They always did, eventually. Rear Admiral Harlan Crow lived long enough to see the first interstellar accords signed in the ruins of what had once been New York Harbor. He sat in a wheelchair on the deck of a repurposed Concord battlecruiser, now painted with the old UN blue, watching delegates from 100 worlds argue over trade routes and memory rights. When a young alien diplomat asked him why humanity had fought so hard for something as intangible as feeling, Crow laughed until tears ran down his weathered cheeks. "Because the alternative is worse than death," he said. "We'd rather burn bright and brief than live forever dim." He died 6 months later, peacefully, surrounded by grandchildren who had never known a sky without ships. His last words, recorded by the family AI, were simple. "Tell them we won the argument." Earth healed, slowly, stubbornly. Forests regrew over scorched plains. Cities rose again, not as gleaming utopias, but as honest patchwork cold stone beside new alloy. Rooftop gardens spilling over skyscrapers patched with salvaged hull plates. Children played in parks where bunkers once stood, laughing at stories of the old rain the way earlier generations had laughed at fairy tales of dragons. But the scars remained deliberate ones. Memorial walls listed every name broadcast during Echo. Every year on the anniversary of the Fury's impact, people gathered at dawn to read them aloud, not in mourning, but in gratitude. The reading lasted days. No one complained. The galaxy changed because humanity refused to let it stay the same. Species that had forgotten how to grieve relearned it. Wars that had dragged on for millennia ended when one side broadcast a child's recording of her mother singing. Empires that prized efficiency discovered the terrifying efficiency of love. And through it all, humans remained the same messy, contradictory creatures. Starting bar fights over poetry, crying at sunsets on alien moons, naming their ships after lost friends, building cathedrals out of scrap because beauty mattered even when survival didn't. They became teachers, ambassadors, cautionary tales, and hope all at once. The ultimate legacy wasn't technology or territory, it was permission. Permission to feel everything, to remember everything, to be gloriously, inconveniently alive. Sofia returned to Earth one last time on the 20th anniversary. She was 32 now, captain of the exploration vessel Defiance. Scars on her hands from a dozen first contacts, eyes the same fierce brown as her mother's. She walked the old mountain paths alone until she reached the overlook where Elena used to stand watch. The view was different green where it had been ash, lights twinkling across valleys that once held only darkness, but the Rockies still stood stubborn against the sky. Sofia sat on the same rock, pulled out the holly frame that had survived everything, and watched the old image of her mother laughing with a 6-year-old version of herself. "We did it," she said aloud, voice steady, not clean, not perfect. "But we did it." A breeze moved through the pines. Somewhere in the ether, a familiar presence brushed against her mind, warm, amused, proud, no words. Just the certainty that Elena was still listening. Sofia smiled, wiped her eyes, and stood. "I'm heading out again tomorrow. New arm of the galaxy. They say it's quiet out there. Probably won't stay that way once we arrive." She touched the frame one last time, then tucked it away. "Love you, Mama. Keep the stars company for me." She walked back down the path, boots crunching on gravel, the weight of 20 years lifting with every step. Behind her, the sun rose over a world that had learned painfully, beautifully what it meant to be human. It had redeemed the galaxy, one stubborn heartbeat at a time, Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below.